Commentaries pertaining to the freedom of the Menendez brothers. Thank you for joining me. News Nation, Cuomo is the source. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $McGangie 129 Cash App. Thank you for your time.
Why should people understand that you had a change in what you understood about the circumstances surrounding the death of your sister and her husband?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I don't know that there was a change, but over the years, we really did know that there was abuse at gut level. But as time goes on and we all talk to each other more and more, and it validates the fears and the gut level reactions that we had that solidified the knowledge that the sexual abuse actually did occur, because that's not something you want to believe. And then once you talk to each other, it becomes more and more obvious.
We're going to interject here. The one older sister, she didn't finish her commentary, so the other relative jumped in. What did you know? What did you know and what did you not know? Gut feeling versus what you know are two different things. And naturally, when you go to a court of law, what you think happened is not proof. So what did you know for sure? Because you're talking about men who are older, 50 plus years old. So it's like, if you knew something then, when they were young boys, teenagers, or whatever age you thought something was going on, why didn't you say something? See, this goes back to my commentary that I've spoken so many times pertaining to the abuse of children essay. Why are you people just waiting till something bad happens to say, yeah, I thought about that. Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, I have proof of that. This makes no sense to me. Because they're incarcerated. Now, naturally, what they did was wrong by killing their parents. Everyone's entitled to their opinion pertaining to the brutality of the homicides of their biological parents. But I'm not them. I was not in their shoes. I don't know what their mental capacity was. I don't know their motivation. If it was just the essay, or they wanted money, or they want whatever. Everyone's entitled to his or her opinion. But my thing is, when people have knowledge of something, that's where I have the problem. It's the having the knowledge that someone is being abused, a minor, because you don't have control over adults being abused, but you do have control over a minor. You need to say something. And we have seen thousands of cases where people go report to DHS, DFACS, whomever, and nothing is done. They go do their interrogation, their investigation, and they go to the home and they don't see anything awry. But just because you go into a home and it's nice furnishings, nice cars in the driveway, 2.2 dogs running around, that does not mean the child is not being abused. And we have seen this self-evident with the Ruby Frankie case. Okay? She's going live all the time talking about her life with her kids on YouTube, painted up. And then people started noticing things about her that wasn't quite right. DHS gets involved, nothing's found. You know why nothing's found? Because they're going inside the house and they're looking at a nice house. They're looking at nice cars in the driveway. They're looking at bedrooms with nice furnishings. That don't mean nothing. If you talk to the children, that's your proof in the pudding. You take the children to the doctor to get physical exams, make sure they're checking all cavities, if you get my drift. That's your proof in the pudding. I don't think a lot of people, let me say law enforcement, likes to do due diligence when they see that the people look upright. But upright don't mean that they are right. Because it's an illusion. Everything about life is an illusion. Who you see, what you see outside, that's not the whole person. So driving by in a nice neighborhood and looking at nice homes and $1 million homes and nice facades, flower beds outside. That has nothing to do with the fuck is going on inside of a house. And that is what we're seeing still to this day. People just refuse to accept that people abuse their children. It's like you all are in a bubble. Oh, my brother wouldn't do that. My sister would never. Well, you don't know the human mind, nor do you know the human spirit.
I understand. So, Tamara, when you're thinking through why they did what they did, how do you understand why you don't judge it the way you would under any other circumstances?
Wait. So when I think through it, there was a comment that I had recently heard from the previous prosecutor who basically characterized it as, if they really killed their parents and they were really remorseful, they would have told us or called the police right away. However, if you look at how much pain that they endured, how much torture that they endured, how much abuse that they survived through, that came out in the way that they committed the act that they did. And at that point, given the status of where the family was at, my understanding of the behaviors and the actions after the act was that it was learned behavior of what they knew what to do. And so when I think about it now, it's an act out of pain, it's an act out of misery, and it's something that they were just so desperately wanting to get out of. And while they might have had the means to escape, they also do not want to see it to happen to anybody else, which they knew quite possibly could happen. And
Well, let's go here. The means to escape. Well, the older brother was already in New York, living his best life, had a restaurant, all that. So he was away from the abuse. It was the baby brother who was left behind, who was the one doing the most talking to the cousin about the abuse, writing her a letter 8 months or so beforehand. So it's up to you to decide if the letter was written to cook up a version later or he was telling her the truth. Hey, I'm sick of this. I'm tired of this. He keeps doing these things to me. We also have cooperation from another Menudo member of the boy band that he was sexually assaulted. He says that the other guy was, one of the famous members was, more famous members, was assaulted, but that member won't say that, yes, the father sexually assaulted him. What's the truth? But they don't have the means. The younger brother didn't have the means. He was still living at home, just got, accepted going to college. And see, that's where he should have just said to himself mentally, here is my way out of here. Here is a way out of these circumstances. I've never been accepted to college. Let me go to college and make my way. Let me get some help. But see, everything is by example. If nobody's teaching you how to reach out to people, talk to people, ask for help, you don't know to do that. That's why I said it's easy to judge. Well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Because you have to be taught. You hear her talking about learned behavior. Well, naturally it's learned behavior because you're being groomed. And that's why victims become perpetrators. So a lot of these people who you see perpetrating minors, they were also groomed, sexually assaulted. It's a known fact. And the perpetrators put fear into the victims not to speak. They threaten them until they never speak. And sadly, they grow up, and next thing you know, they're now a perpetrator. It doesn't happen to every child who becomes an adult, but it has been seen with many sadists they were also victims of sexual abuse. Hello, Sammy P. Thank you for joining me.
I do believe, I believe my grandmother has something that she would like to add to that.
Joan?
John, I just want to say that when we finally realized the depth of the awful treatment he was getting from his father, and then my mother admitting that she knew all along and
Oh,
she
wow.
wasn't dumb.
Kitty?
No, my mother, Grandma May. No, not May.
What, Kitty?
Yeah, Kitty said she knew all along. It's just, it's beyond anything we could even describe right now because it's hard. It's so painful. And to think what the Eric.
Now, this elderly lady speaking, I don't know if she may have a little bit of dementia or memory loss, but we'll pray for her because she's an elderly person speaking. She may be a little bit confused, and that's okay. Where I have the problem is the information she's relaying now as an elderly person speaking about Kitty. I think she's the sister of Kitty. So damn crazy. She knew. She said she knew. So are you speaking from hearsay that she knew, or she told you or other family members she knew her husband was molesting the boys? I don't think that Kitty and the husband had a good relationship. And that's expected. Because if he was indeed a sadist, how could they have a good relationship? His preference is boys. Okay? It's homosexual. And the next live stream I'm going to do will be pertaining to the down low brother, down low guy, down low famous person. Please join me for that because I think you will enjoy that content. Because you're seeing more and more stories of famous men who are on the down low, such as this new information with the Abercrombie and Fitch ex-CEO. He had a co-conspirator and other co-conspirator. His lover, boyfriend, who is now his mate, longtime mate, has been accused of molesting, sexually abusing young men coming in, trying to audition for, modeling, so on and so forth. So imagine how many men are out here walking around perpetrating that they're heterosexuals. And that has to be a devastating thing to be a woman, a girlfriend, a wife, and find out the man you've been sleeping with, the man you like, you're attracted to, father of your children, is a homosexual. So that needs to be addressed. Because this is what I keep saying about all this content that's floating around about these heathens. You all refuse to address the real elephant in the room. That these men are homosexuals. Checkmate. Not just they're violating kids, but they're homosexuals. Okay? You are sexually abusing a boy. So you're a pedophile and you're also a homosexual. So then you have to go into the belly of the beast and ask that question pertaining to Mr. Menendez. Was he also having sex with men? Checkmate.
Says now it started when he was 6 years old and he was 18 before he got out of it. But that's a long time. And the judge wants to know why the second trial didn't even occur because the judge wouldn't allow any violence at all. And then that's not fair no matter how you look at it.
Joan, how do you understand Kitty's disposition, Kitty's perspective? If she knew that this was going on, how do you explain why she didn't do anything about it, knowing her the way you did?
I think that she was getting used to the money coming in and the fame and fortune, and I guess her kids were not enough of a sacrifice for her. I don't know what else to say because
The Katie I grew up with would never have allowed that to happen in her home. This was something she had to learn from Jose.
Chris, I think one of the things that Grandma has said to me previously when we've had discussions about this is that Katie did not know, and this statement is very striking to me, is Katie did not know or care about the difference between fame or infamy. And so at that point, attention was attention, and so whatever's going on within the home, just deal with it. It'll make you stronger.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find.
Weigh in. What's the truth about the abuse of the boy children? They're now adults. I'm going to put this into a poll. Please take the poll. You have three options. Yes, no, and not sure. Take the polls. Before I start the next commentary, which will be Fox 11 Los Angeles News, and then I'll also play commentary from a high school mate. I'm gonna play high school mate, classmate gives their commentary that the father was a nasty man, and then I'll give you commentary from Fox 11 LA. Did the father abuse the boy children? Take the poll. Let's hear what the classmate has to say. Thank you for joining. News Nation is the source. Then the next question will be, did Kitty know?
Held belief. I also know.
One second, everybody. Let's hear what this lady has to say. Classmate of the boys. Men, sorry about that.
So I went to high school with him 35 years ago. And what's remarkable to me is in that amount of time, I've gone to college, I went to law school, I've had a family, I've practiced law, and he has remained in prison all of this time. So when I think back on it, I say, oh my God, the time that they've spent in prison is overwhelming. But the crimes that they committed were so gruesome and so awful that at the time, they were given life in prison without the possibility of parole. I have now practiced criminal defense for a very long time. I have never seen so many family members of the victims come to speak on behalf of the people that killed the victims. It is remarkable. It is unheard of. It is unprecedented. And I do think that because of the political climate, because Gascon is down in the pools, this is not an easy call to make. There's a lot of things that can happen in this case in very short order.
You know, I was thinking about that as the family stood outside the courthouse, and I thought, is the family doing Gascon a huge favor right now by softening anybody out there who's against releasing these Menendez brothers, softening the decision that maybe he's already made to release them, making it easier for Gascon to release them without getting any blowback, because for God's sake, here are 20 family members saying, do the right thing.
All right, well, let me go back to the question I actually didn't answer, and that was, I knew Eric, I went to high school with him, and I knew his father, Jose, and he was not a nice man. He was degrading, he was cruel, he humiliated Eric on and off the tennis court all the time. I was not in that bedroom, so I don't know if the sexual molestation took place or not, but I can certainly say that this was a really nasty, nasty man, and that was sort of a universally held belief. I also know that the first trial, there were 50 witnesses on behalf of Eric and Lyle, two different juries. both hung said we really can't decide, and there was this middle ground that was a imperfect self-defense argument, and they could have found for manslaughter, and if they found for manslaughter, they would have been given a maximum of 11 years per each parent of 22 years, and so they would be out. The second trial, the judge gutted that defense, did not allow them to present the sexual abuse claims. Times have changed. Do I think more of that evidence would be in now? Yes. Do I think that this letter that has surfaced that preceded the murders, where it does corroborate one of the witnesses that testified at the first trial, is that new evidence? I do believe that that is new evidence. Is it substantial? It's pretty substantial. So there are legal issues here, but is Gascon going to simply say, I want these boys to be resentenced? And there are laws in California where you can go back and resentence people based on whether they have been rehabilitated, whether they are dangerous to the community, whether they were youthful offenders at the time, did they suffer childhood trauma, physical, emotional, sexual. So there are things.
That's Marcy's law. Because let me jump in only for a moment, because there are two tracks Mark Garagos keeps talking about, and he's their lawyer now. The track number one is the resentencing, where under the law, these guys are now considered victims under Marcy's law, and they can consider readjusting the length of that sentence, and then that's done. The other track is the full-on, get me out of here, habeas corpus, you're holding me illegally. I mean, you're literally holding the body as habeas corpus, that's what it means.
Right.
And that is another track whereby the evidence would come in of the letter saying that we did the wrong thing by not allowing that evidence in. We shouldn't be holding them.
Right, and I don't think that Mark Garagos is probably going to win on that issue, on the habeas corpus issue, because it's ultimately up to the judge. It's not up to the district attorney's office. And will these boys be retried with new evidence reintroduced? I think it's more likely that Gascon will recommend a resentencing, where he says that given the rehabilitation, given this new evidence, given all of the statements that were given today through Marcy's law, where remember, all of these people are considered victims. These are the nieces, the nephews, the sisters of the man and the woman who were slaughtered by their children, and they are saying, let them out.
Thanks for watching. Go to join and
Let them out. Should they be freed? Take the polls, please, during this live stream. Did father abuse sons? Only 3 people have voted. Wow. 19 people watching. Take the poll, everybody. This young lady was a classmate of Eric. He is the younger son, the one who, I believe, possibly suffered the most of the abuse by the father, because he was left behind while Lau had gone away to school in New York. And he's also the one that wrote the letter to the cousin. And possibly he was telling the truth. He wrote that letter to the cousin. He was tired of the abuse. And we've seen cases of people who react to abuse not in the moment. There's no crime being committed at that time, but the person decides to exact revenge. There was a case out of Georgia many moons ago where a young boy killed his grandfather because he was tired of his antics, foul mouth, cruelty. And we also learned that same father was abusing his own daughter, which was the mother of this boy child. And I remember in watching the commentary, he said after he murdered his grandfather, that was the first time he slept like a baby. I want you to think about that. The first time in my life I had a good night's sleep after murdering my grandfather. He was tired. And that's what people don't understand about abuse. Physical, mental abuse, being an eyewitness to abuse, it affects people in different ways. And a person can become disgusted. And they don't have to kill the person in the act, during the act. They just look at the person one day and say, I want your ass out of here. You have wreaked havoc enough. And it has been verified that the father was sleeping with his own child, grown female child. So that means he was abusing her as a child and as an adult for him to even be having sex with her as a grown ass woman. This is a true story. Just imagine a grandpa sleeping with his own damn kid, father sleeping with his own daughter. And the son decides, enough of this. He's a tyrant, he's rude, he's nasty, he's vulgar. Sleeping with my mother? We'll put this rabid dog down. And no, it's not right to commit murder. But I'm not in their shoes. I wasn't in this child's shoes. I wasn't in the mother's shoes. So it is easy to judge. And we know in the scripture, if you believe in the Bible, thou shalt not kill. But the human mind is just what it is. It's just tissue. It's flesh. And that's what we have to always remember about emotions. Is that we are human and we are the flesh. We're not robots. We're not toys. We're not dolls. The human mind controls our emotions and how we act and how we react. And what you may do, another person may not do. And we say this all the time, do we not? I would never do that. I would have called 911. I would have done this. But you're not that person. So it's easy to judge because you're not in their shoes. And we've seen this time and time again with true crime. People popping off when there was no crime being committed at that time. They just lost it because they have been abused by the person, persecuted by the person, and one day they looked at the person and said, I'm sick of your ass. I want you out of here. The person was no imminent threat at that time, but they have been abusive. So how do you all feel about that? A person committing a crime against a perpetrator, but the perpetrator wasn't committing an act of violence at that time. Because there are crimes where people have murdered a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, lover, parent, guardian, and there was possibly no abuse at that time. But the person looked at them and said, you're a threat irregardless if you're doing something or not. I'll put that up as a poll on the community page as well. News Nation was that source pertaining to the classmate of Eric Menendez. She's also a defense attorney. Speaking of how cruel Mr. Menendez was to his son, and we had heard those stories before, critiquing his tennis play, always having a complaint about how he played tennis. This is why I said Eric should have just went to school, applied for scholarships, and made his way like other children. But if nobody is rearing you to tell you what you need to do as an adult, you obviously don't think for yourself to say, well, I need to apply for this, I need to apply for this, where I don't have to rely on my parents, because Lau was already in New York doing his own thing. He's left behind to contend with the mother and the father. So obviously he wasn't taught what to do to better himself as an adult going into college. So you have to lead by example. And if you don't reach out to people to say, hey, I'm being abused, hey, I'm being sexually abused, hey, I want to go to college, I want to stay away in college, I don't want to stay at this house, these people are abusing me. That's all he knew. This is the very reason why children don't speak up. It's because it's what you're used to. Don't mean you like it, but it's what you're used to. He was dependent on these people. He wasn't taught to branch out. He didn't have the fortitude to do what other young people did, which is run away, get the fuck out of Dodge. He didn't do that. Fox 11 is the next source, Los Angeles. Thank you for joining me. Should these men be freed? Why wasn't that letter introduced into evidence pertaining to Eric telling his cousin of the said abuse? 27 people watching, only 8 votes. Take the poll, please. Did the father abuse his sons?
Well, it's interesting that the letter apparently was obviously Eric wrote it.
Let's go back a bit.
Now following the Netflix series, the Menendez brothers could be released. The district attorney has announced that he will make a decision on Friday on whether or not the resentencing of the brothers will actually occur. 53-year-old Eric and 56-year-old Lyle Menendez currently serving life sentences without parole. Joining us this morning as our plus one to discuss all of this is a former federal prosecutor, Stephen Caceres. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
We have
Before I play this content, Fox 11 LA, I want everyone to think about what these men have forfeited by killing their parents, which was their choice. You have not been able to live a full life. You've not been able to engage in conversation with people freely. You've not been able to roam the earth freely, work a job, drive a car, have a home, partake in activities, travel, musicals, festivities, sporting events, church, meeting new people, talking, marriage, bearing children. They have not been able to have this experience because of that fateful decision they made to murder their parents. And once again, they didn't make this decision on their own. Nobody forced them to kill their parents. But this is what people need to understand about homicide, about acting out. One thing begets another. When you make the fateful decision to put your hands on another human being, you should know you're risking forfeiture of your freedom depending on the crime. And the fact that they shot these people to death, these entities, these parents, you forfeited your freedom. You also heard in the News Nation commentary, they could have at least gotten 11 years per parent. So they could have been done with their time many moons ago. I don't know what their lawyer told them. I don't know what they told their lawyer. But maybe they should have taken the plea and done the 11 times 2. Because in the end, you did kill the parents. They were not an imminent threat at that time. And then 2, you have to prove that they were an imminent threat at that time. So this is what I would tell to people. I say this to young people because I don't give advice to older people because it's pointless. But to younger people, think about what you're doing. Think about the decisions you are making because you have to remember you can't go back. Whether you're acting out, mad, upset, you're going to hit somebody, shoot somebody, vandalize their property, car, whatever. Think about it because you can't go back. And the one thing you don't want, period, whether you're a child, a young adult, or an older person, you don't want a criminal record because it follows you. You don't want to be judged according to something you did in haste. You were lashing out. But that's the point of what I'm saying is that you're human. And the brain is just what it is. It's just tissue. We all make mistakes. We all fall short of the glory. We act out. Some of us act out more than others. This is why I tell you, you need to treat people accordingly. Because trust me, you don't want to end up like Mr. and Mrs. Menendez. Because you're out here doing salacious bullshit if we're to believe the allegations. Because people will kill you for no reason. But believe that. So imagine being murdered for a reason. You're molesting your children. You are aiding your husband molesting your children. You did nothing. Your children murdered you. This is why I said you need to treat people accordingly, because you don't know what end of the stick you're going to be. People are killed every day for no reason. The person felt like I had to get rid of him or her. They were causing me problems, issues. They were hurting me, harming me. And then there's people who just do it because they want out. Relationship, marriage, custody issues, fraud, whatever. See, everything's about ideology, perception.
Ton of questions, so I think you're ready for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we first talk about what is leading to the fact that there might be a new trial, a resentencing of sorts. Where's the evidence here?
Yeah, some of this isn't new. So back in May of 2023, the brothers filed this motion for habeas corpus, so basically for a new trial to vacate their sentence. And they based it on two pieces of new evidence that they allege is new. One being a letter that Eric wrote to his cousin, Andy Kano, in the months before the murder, where he told his cousin he was still being abused that late. And then Roy Rosello, former member of Menudo, that was managed by RCA, where the father, Jose, was an executive, claims the father was abusing him back in the early mid-'80s, which suggests consistency with what the brothers alleged, that they were abused by Jose as well.
Why is all this evidence coming to light now?
You know, it's interesting that the letter apparently was obviously Eric wrote it, so theoretically he would have known about it, but it went to Andy. I think the mother was on a Barbara Walters special maybe 5-7 years ago when the letter came to light, and it turned out the brothers' lawyers weren't aware of the letter. And so that's their argument for why it's new. And then the Roy Rosello evidence. This is, you know, obviously if he was abused, it's difficult to come forward with those sort of things. He now has, and the brothers didn't have access to his statements as well.
You know, this all begs the question of why the attention, on this case. And at the time, this is one of the most televised cases, right? We didn't have all like court TV and all of those things that we're seeing now. So there's a lot of attention on the case at the time. And now the Netflix series. And so this case has been scrutinized, has been publicized for so long. Do you think that's why it's getting the attention that it's getting?
I mean, I think it's a confluence of issues. The Netflix issue and the fact that it's in the media and it's very popular. The public is really attached to the story and it's revived the life of the story. But it's also in LA, it's an election year.
Yeah,
we have a DA who's being challenged. The DA has been criticized a little bit for some of his justice reform policies, and he's being challenged by someone who I actually know very personally who's challenging him on some of those issues. And, there's a little bit of pressure on the DA to make a statement about this stuff just in the weeks after the special came out. And he has made some statements already in the public, as you probably know, where he's suggested maybe the brothers shouldn't be in jail for the rest of their lives.
I guess I'm just wondering if any of this would be happening if it weren't for that Netflix series and the documentary that came out.
Well, it's a good question, because the motion was in May 23 and it sat for many, many months. It kept getting continued, extended. And only after the Netflix special came out did the DA make comments. And all of a sudden, kind of the momentum pushing it forward started.
And the court of public opinion, how much does this play a role in all of this?
I mean, it does, because our public officials, our DA, even our judges in state courts, they're elected. So they do feel pressure. That's the way the system's built, unlike the federal system where they have lifetime appointments. It's a different system. So they're kind of responding to that. And again, because the DA in Los Angeles has been criticized a little bit for his justice reform issues, which way will he go on this? Who knows? I think he just said a day or two ago that he's going to give us an answer on his office's response in the next day or two.
Right. I want to go back about 30 years when all this first happened, right? Because there's a big social difference between the first trial, which ended up in a hung jury, and the second trial. O.J. Simpson verdict came out.
Yeah.
In between those two trials, how much of that had to do with the verdict that we saw in the second trial?
I mean, I think it had to at some level. I mean, you've got to understand at the time when the OJ acquittals happened, I think people were shocked that it happened. The first trial ended up in hung juries. A lot of defense evidence came into the first trial. The second trial post OJ, a lot of that defense evidence was excluded. Remember, it's the same judge, Judge Weisberg, also did the Rodney King trial of the officers who were accused of beating Rodney King, and they were acquitted as well. Maybe there was a little pressure on him, so he took a different tack on the second trial. I think it's inevitable that the outcome in the OJ trial had some impact on the views and the way the second case was tried.
Well, sticking to that theme here, the fact that in the second trial they didn't allow evidence of any sexual abuse, alleged sexual abuse, to be presented. I mean, wasn't the entire case built on that? So by taking that away, how could you try that case?
They allowed some of it, a little bit. Andy Kano, the cousin, still did testify, but the government didn't have to worry about all that corroborating evidence. They just called him a liar. And
that was it?
And that was basically it. They called him a liar, said Eric was a liar because he didn't have all the corroborating evidence you had in the first trial. It was easier for a jury to believe that. But in the second trial also, the judge did not let the jury vote on murder one, murder two, or manslaughter. They were given murder one or nothing. So that's a lot more pressure on the jury to come to some sort of positive outcome. Otherwise, they let them walk.
And at the time, times were very different. You didn't think that men could be sexually abused or sexually assaulted at that time. Times have changed right now. And that's why we're also taking a look again at this case in a very different lens.
Sure.
We also think about all those cases that don't have the Hollywood treatment, right? That could be looked at very differently now because times have changed. Do you think that puts into question the judicial system? And is there enough time and resources to revisit all these cases for people?
Whether there are resources and time, there may not be, but there are people who are doing this work. The judge that this case is before, that's all he does. The new judge, William Ryan, he's in the Court of Claims, the Ritz Court, and he basically hears these habeas claims for defendants who claim they were wrongfully convicted, and he's been doing it for 30 years. So the case is now before someone who does this for a living. Other people do get access to that judge, but it's a very narrow portion of the population who gets access, and obviously, if you have money and or somewhat notoriety in order to get your voice heard, obviously it's an advantage.
What do you think's going to happen with these brothers?
If I had to guess, I'd say they're probably getting out.
Wow.
I would say it's powerful evidence. You know, there's a lot of pressure on people, but times, like you said, times have changed. People's views of these things have changed.
So you do work now for the Foundation Law Group, right? Which is here in Southern California, Silicon Valley, Pacific, Northwest. It's virtual.
Yes.
What exactly does your firm do?
Foundation Law Group is a partnership of 20 lawyers who do litigation, corporate and finance, employment. I do white collar criminal defense. It's a distributed law firm, so basically the lawyers are, like you said, in Silicon Valley, distributed throughout LA. But because we're virtual, we basically work together, but each of the individual lawyers kind of essentially control their own destiny and their own practice with respect to their clients, which gives a lot of flexibility to the lawyers. When I worked in a big firm, relative to then, you know, our flexible fee arrangements are 20, 30, 40% less, but you're still getting lawyers with 20, 25 years of experience in federal court, state court, and in complex transactions. So it's an advantage at some level that we think we offer to clients. So that's kind of the focus of the firm.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate for you coming in, talking about all this. Your insight is much appreciated. We'll be watching all of us, of course, see what happens on Friday. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All righty. So I'm giving you information from News Nation pertaining to the classmate of Eric Menendez, saying that the father was very cruel to him, always critiquing him very harshly with his athletic abilities, playing sports. Played through commentary from News Nation as well, pertaining to the parents. The relatives of the boys, who want them free. 20 members want them free. And then I brought you commentary here from Fox 11 Los Angeles pertaining to the letter that was not introduced into evidential material. Their attorneys not knowing of the said letter that Eric wrote to this said male cousin of his abuse by his father. So, do you believe that these boys were abused? Number one. Do you believe their father abused him? Do you believe the father also abused other boy children and members of the Menudo band? I've also posted these questions to my community page. One second. Did Kitty Menendez know that her husband abused her sons? That's what I put on there. Now I'm going to ask, will the Menendez brothers be freed? Please take the polls. I give you three options: yes, no, and not sure. Will they be freed? Did Kitty Menendez know that her husband abused her sons? Did the father abuse his sons? And then I'm going to ask also on the poll on my community page, did Mr. Menendez abuse any of the other said boy children of the boy band Menudo? One second, everybody. Troubling information. Take the polls, everybody. Should these young men be free? Because as I said, they have forfeited a lot by murdering their parents, which was a choice. Do you believe the allegations? Do you believe they feared their father, mother? Is it a combination of sick of the abuse, monetary gain? Weigh in. Should brothers be freed? 7 votes so far, 25 watching. Come on, you guys, take the polls. So far, 57% of you believe they should be freed. 29% says no. 14% of you are not sure. Well, no matter your beliefs pertaining to this storyline, they will have a hearing November 26th to determine resentencing or evidentiary material pertaining to their case. We will see what happens. I'll bring you an update. Please check out my earlier content pertaining to Sean Puffy Combs, Leilani Simon, and Sarah Boone. I did not bring an update yesterday pertaining to Leilani and Sarah Boone, but I will try to get that information out by morning, and we will go from there. From my understanding, the state is rested, but they are also going to call in other witnesses. Go to my community page to weigh in on how you feel the case is going pertaining to Leilani Simon, her demeanor, what has been said in court, the testimony by witnesses and law officials. It's very disturbing information pertaining to them finding a skull and a severed foot of the baby boy. Just really sad and sickening. And prayers for a young girl who was found murdered on a trail in Powell, Tennessee, which sits right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. It's north of Knoxville. A 15-year-old boy has been arrested for her murder. What led to his arrest? Why did he kill this young 13-year-old girl? Was it SA? A few young children or whomever have been commenting underneath the videos. One perception is that possibly she rebuffed his advances for sex. I don't know. That's just somebody's opinion. But what happened and why did this 15-year-old murder a 13-year-old girl? This is very disturbing information coming out of East Tennessee. The point is, as I've always said, you don't know people. So it doesn't really matter where the crime took place. You don't know people. It doesn't matter if you invited them to your home, you went to their home, a party, a function, public place, a trail. You don't know people. So I've also asked the question, was this boy child in trouble? Did he get in trouble? Does he have an arrest record? Had he been reprimanded by the school system? Lots of questions. Because naturally all that's going to be evidentiary when he goes to trial, if he takes it to trial. And will he be tried as an adult? Should he be tried as an adult? I'll also post that as a question on my community page as well. Like, share, subscribe, drop your comments below this video. Take the polls on my community page. Also follow the Queen on Newsbreak. It is an app that brings you breaking news in your area, United States, and around the world. Put in your location and you'll get updates pertaining to your jurisdiction. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $BeganG129 Cash App. Thank you for your time. Will the Menendez brothers get a chance at freedom? Do they deserve freedom? Or should they be incarcerated for life? Weigh in. You've been listening to the Vault XL.